Good morning, students. Welcome back to lecture 11 of genomics and proteomics. Today we will be discussing about express sequence tags and DNA genotypic and polymorphisms. In terms of the polymorphism, we will talk more about SNPs and a little bit more about genetic testing to conclude Unit 2 for our syllabus, BTH 403. The outline of the lecture has been divided into several topics. The first, we will talk about mainly express sequence tag. What are these sequence tags? How they will help you to understand or annotate the genome, understand the gene function, and what are cDNAs and what are cDNA libraries. We will talk briefly about our basic brush up with basic molecular biology, look into more ESTs. What are they? What they will do? What the functional significance of ESTs? Followed by that, we will talk about SNPs, which constitute one of the fundamental concept of DNA polymorphism or gene variations. But before that, we will cover or brush up our basics in terms of genetics, population genetics, alleles, allele frequency, and polymorphism. Then go into genotypic and DNA as the disease association. For example, we are looking at a single polymorphism coming to individual, comparing to two individual. But if we go in terms of a population wide, a whole worldwide, different populations will have different polymorphisms and variants of SNPs. So that will associate with diseases. So we will call it as genome-wide association, disease genome-wide association diseases. So we will study in about that one concept. How do you study a whole genomes for disease association, or study a whole population for disease association in terms of the alleles? And then briefly conclude the class with DNA chips and small write-up on diagnostic genes, or it's a kind of together with these two concepts. So let's say, coming on to back to the slide, we will look into that. There is a given sequence here. Let's take two scenarios. One scenario is a marine biologist who is working on marine biology in terms of the genomics. He goes to Antarctica, he goes to some other marine isolated world, and he isolates some species of the pathogens or whatever novel he can find. And he comes and he isolates the sequence using the normal technologies. He can use it sequencing at the spot, or he can use the sequencing at the company and then get the sequences. So he's trying it for the first time. We are seeing close to 2000 or 5000 base pairs here, DNA given a single strand, 5000 bases. Let's say the marine biologist sequence of the sample he got, because it is marine and not much of primers he couldn't find, not much of sequences he could do, sequencing reactions he could do. So he got only a small stretches of DNA, whatever from the genome, maybe 1000 base pairs, 200 base pairs, or less than that. So his study will be in terms of limitations, in terms of the availability of genomic sequences, starting material. There will be limitation that he might got a small fragments of 1000 nucleotide or less than that, or maybe 2000 nucleotide sequence. From there, how he can proceed to studies in terms of carry out each study. What is this sequence about? What is this organism? Is it novel? It's a known genome or not? So based on those given small information of 1000 to 2000 nucleotides, he can go into a kind of EST generation or tags that we will see what are those. In another case, the part of the gene that he given here may be a part of the gene that codes for a protein. If it codes for the proteins, that means whatever we look, chromosome, DNA into transcription into RNA translation into protein. Whatever DNA that codes, having a coding sequences, codes for mRNA. So basically, if a gene is transcribed, means it is giving a kind of specific molecule of mRNA that translated correspondingly gives a protein. So that's what, if the given sequence, one of the important thing that whether if the sequence is expressed or not, if expressed, a specific mRNA will be given. That gives him a good hand on studying the gene function, mainly what he is interested in the genome function. So what protein it codes from the genome. So he can deduce something out of it. And also one more important, given a sequence of the genome, sometimes the genome may not be DNA. So you may code for only RNA, then you may isolate RNA genomes only. Excuse me. So that may be the one case. RNA genomes may only will come up. Further, we will see in terms of what are expressions. If the molecule of the mRNA is expressed, it codes for a protein, and how it's functional in terms of express sequencing tags. An express sequencing tag is a part of a short subsequence of a complementary DNA sequence that we will see what is a cDNA sequence. ESTs may be used to identify gene transcripts. Mainly, I'm talking about gene transcripts, mRNAs, and are instrumental in gene discovery and gene sequence determination. Because you are talking about in terms of the gene means a protein coding genes. So ESTs are really important to isolate protein coding genes. In terms of what is a cDNA, you go in terms of the enzyme called transcription can go in bidirectional using a reverse transcriptase isolated from viruses and other organism. You can go back in the step of transcription from RNA to mRNA. So example, so it's RNA only here, RNA to DNA. So you're taking an example of RNA, mRNA here. You go with reverse transcriptase. You copy the RNA in blue into your DNA. The complement of the RNA, see DNA sequence coming from the complement of the RNA through reverse transcriptase is called complementary DNA. Complementary DNA is also single stranded, you see here. Then this RNA DNA hybrid, it can be with the ribonuclease degradation, RNase enzyme, you can degrade the RNA, then you get a cDNA that is single. Then allowed the given nucleotides, you can again replicate this into a double-stranded DNA. And further, by doing so, you get a generation of the RNA because RNA can degrade easily. You get a stable form of RNA indirectly, cDNA and double-stranded DNA. Once you get a double-stranded DNA molecule, then you can go and design a specific 5' and 3' ESTs, express sequence tags. That ESTs will help in terms of recognizing the transcription or in terms of the message of the gene present here. So there are 5' and 3' ESTs you can generate. Remember that complementary DNA is important if you are talking about ESTs because you are looking at the expressed form of the DNA indirectly from the mRNA. If you zoom in a little bit, this is the genomic DNA in the green, and cDNA coming in this orange color. You get into the exons and then splicing, go into a specific cDNA molecule because you look at the 5' 3' ESTs. Basically, ESTs are nothing but primers, but the primers may be for non-coding, coding on any portion of the genome. But ESTs are specifically you're designing specific primers in terms of the mRNA molecule, and length of the ESTs are also variable to approximately it's less than 1000 bases now. So nowadays, in olden days, it was 100 bases. The primer may be 10 to 20 bases long only. So on this genomic DNA, you are talking about in vivo. In vivo, this transcription happens. But from the transcription to reverse transcription, how do you make cDNA? You are talking about not in the in vivo condition. You are making artificially the cDNA using in vitro condition. You synthesize the cDNA molecule. You design the primer. Okay, look into that. The tag containing that expression of this cDNA molecule in terms of the attached to a tag is called of the expression of the gene expressed sequence tag. The sequence tag I am talking in terms of ESTs is expressed. It means the gene is on, mRNA is there. Whether it codes for a protein or not, it's secondary. And also important thing that we will look in from tissue to tissue how mRNA levels can change. Coming on to cDNA library, we looked in previous classes that how do you generate a DNA library construction? How do you generate a cDNA library construction? RNA libraries. Again, the same concept. You go with PCR, RT-PCR, cDNA. You ligate here for sequencing purposes. You go with the specific adapters. But in terms of the cDNA library in general, you take these small fragments. You use a specific vector molecule. You clone them, ligate them into the vector. And the vector with the cloning techniques, you can isolate in specific vectors, small fragments, and catalog them. So again, express sequence tags are generated by high throughput single pass sequencing of complementary cDNA clones. You're talking about not DNA, you're not talking about RNA here. You're talking that molecule that is a prime molecule that gives ESTs, cDNA molecules. You go with a specific technology called single pass sequencing. You generate high throughput qualities if given genome is there. You generate a lot of molecules of ESTs similar to the DNA sequencing clones. And a cDNA library is a snapshot presentation of the messenger RNA population. See, you're talking about cDNA, it's coming onto the messenger RNA now. The messenger RNA population can change within a given cell type, brain cell to the tissue in the kind of eye development to brain development, hand development to leg development, the mRNA molecules are different because different proteins are there. At the same time, it changes from tissue to tissue, lymphoid organ to kind of nervous system. It changes from organism to organism in terms of phylogenetically, and also it changes certain set of conditions of a particular type. You're looking at a species, you're looking at a space, and you're looking at a condition in terms of space, and you're looking at a moment in terms of the time. mRNA molecules can be variable, and also same mRNA codes for different mRNA molecules, right? Polypeptide ribosome can synthesize many polypeptides from same mRNA. So that is also important, that a copy of mRNA molecules at a given time, given tissue changes. So this is an important, because if you talk about disease, for example, a cell type in terms of cancer cell type, normal cell type, messenger mRNA molecule population will be diverse. If they are diverse, you can use express sequence tag to compare with disease and non-disease condition. Little bit more characteristic of ESTs, again given mRNA or cDNA molecule, then you generate multiple ESTs, 5', 3' ESTs, and again they may overlap for a given sequence. You might generate multiple ESTs, or you given a EST, also take this example and you blast it with the whole genome of your known organism for comparative genomics. You may get a lot of hits similar to that, because ESTs are based on the cDNA, that means based on the gene. You may get multiple hits within the sequence. It's nothing but contigs. We are looked in the sequencing contigs, right? ESTs can also be overlapping with each other. Then you generate a EST contigs. Again, you generate reassembly of the library and double check. But if you zoom in the sequence, if you are not using the adapters from sequencing technology, if you are using a fundamental traditional vectors, you may get a vector molecule repeats at some ends in the 5', 3' because of the ligation reaction. And the specificity of the EST depends on that. In the given EST sequence, approximately the first 20 and the last 20 nucleotides may not be consistent, or may not give a proper information of what you are looking for, that in terms of matching with the genome. But the middle, in terms of 60% from 20 to 80 nucleotides length of the given percentage, 60% of the ESTs will generate highly informative length, highly informative information if you do a blast with the genome. Thus, in summary, express sequence tags are relatively short DNA sequences. It was olden times up to 300 nucleotides, but technology has evolved. Now it's up to 1000 nucleotides, generally generated from 5', 3' ends of cDNA clones, from which PCR primers can be derived, or RT-PCR already done, and use it to detect the presence of specific coding sequence in a genomic DNA. You're looking for a coding sequences. ESTs will not help you identify non-coding sequences. It just, if you are interested in terms of the protein coding regions, or what the genome encodes in terms of the proteins only, you can go with terms of studying ESTs. In terms of coming on to genomics, how to organize ESTs, how to collect and organize them using the genomic databases. You go with specific techniques called clustering of the ESTs, assembly of the ESTs, map them just similar to the assembly, and double checking the sequencing reactions, and interpreting based on the database. If you look in the flow chart will look like that. You given EST sequences roughly, you go with a specific process of first generating high quality ESTs, because low quality or low length short ESTs may not fetch you, because human genome is highly repetitive. You may not get a proper genomic information there. They may go and attach to specifically to some non-coding if given a small fragment of 10 to 20 nucleotide, just like primers. But if given a process length, you get into certain parameters, you go into high quality ESTs, then you cluster and assemble them through a software program. You generate a consensus EST sequences. From that EST sequences, they are nothing but mRNA molecules, right? You go into a putative peptide sequence generation, what are the amino acids from these codons, and then protein database search, you go into a significant match what you are interested in. If not, you go directly into the nucleotide database search, you again generate a significant match. If the match is found, you go with functional annotation and output and interpretation of your results. If you don't get a match with the given genomes of the whatever sequence so far, you highlight it as a novel sequences, you approach, you go into de novo assembly, go into some other novel techniques available for EST assembly and try to find out what you are really interested in. So there are again general databases available for ESTs to study and analyze ESTs. One of the important one, DBEST at NCBI. Another one is at Unigene. You go into a little bit, zoom into each of them. You look into further details, what the GeneBank DBESTs are. So it is nothing but it provides the information of all the ESTs available within the given sequences or genomes they are sequenced. From that, if known and unknown genome you have isolated, you go into getting into search and annotate your project within that. So you read a little bit more about the text here, whatever I have spoken, you have summarized here again one more time. You recapitulate the information here. And Unigene is again, they are talking about Unigene, talking about unique genes or genes only. And the databases will give you only gene information, a set of gene-oriented clusters only. From that, you can easily generate ESTs also separately. You can use this Unigene database also to study ESTs. Coming on to summary in terms of the EST libraries, up to this point, cDNA library is nothing but generation of the genome sequencing, whatever we studied in previous classes. But from the point 6, you talk about designing 5', 3' ESTs. Accordingly, you go into cDNA end and sequencing of ESTs. Large collection of ESTs can be generated. From them, cross-check with the assembly and annotate the genome in terms of ESTs. Whatever your question in terms of what are the ESTs present, what the genes are coding, what they are doing in terms of. Coming on to functionality of the ESTs, one of the important functionality ESTs can help is that if you have a normal tissue and you have a cancer tissue, tissue 1 and tissue 2, the normal tissue will have a normal repertoire of mRNA molecules, genomes, and normal repertoire of express sequence tags given the human genome. You can go and identify, annotate a healthy condition of a tissue, healthy set of ESTs that are coming up in this condition. Then if you compare them into a cancer tissue, you can get a changes in the EST sequences. The EST assembly look different from the normal condition. Then you isolate the differences from the algorithm. What is the specifically unique difference for cancer tissue in terms of EST assembly? And based on that, you can deduce which portions of the genes or proteins are malfunctioning or upregulated or downregulated in the cancer tissue. You can analyze that. So if a given tissue, given mRNAs, you go in the forward direction, but in the reverse direction, if any cancer tissue you're talking, you don't know about any of these functionality or molecules, you can simply blindly go into the assembly, take the sample from mRNA collection, cDNAs from this, blindly go and get into the details of the cancer association or disease association. This is a bit more information on EST analysis, a very beautiful paper written on a Hitchhiker's Guide to Express Sequence Tag. This was done in 2006 and most of the EST studies were done in 1990s also. That's why at that time, before Human Genome Project also, EST analysis was happening because I was interested in chromosome 20 of human. I was doing my traditional methodology. I developed some ESTs on my own. I was studying that. Same way the whole world, different scientists were studying. At that time, they were highly using this EST technology. But when the Human Genome Project approached, this EST also helped in the annotation of the Genome Project very well. They can use the landmarks and they can annotate it also given. Okay, that is the fundamentals of ESTs, how the ESTs will help in a given disease situation, how they help to decode the mRNA molecules. If you are talking about mRNA molecules in terms of the functionality of the given cell or organism or healthy condition or non-healthy condition, and what kind of databases are used, or how do you generate the library, what are 5', 3' ESTs. That was the functional. It may be given for 2 marks or 4 mark question. I think it's an important topic. You concentrate on that. Make notes of it. Okay, coming to the second chapter, second concept of the presentation, that is on DNA genotyping. When you talk about genotyping, when you talk genotype, one of the things you go back into further of genetics, Mendelian genetics, Gregor John Mendel. You used the P plans to analyze and study the concrete relation between genotype and phenotype. And also he coined the terms locus, loci, alleles. He used the terms mapping and he used the term recombination. He is the one defined many of the fundamental concepts of genes and genotypes and phenotypes. So we will brush up our memory a little bit. We'll see, depending on the time how much we cover this day, we might redo it again. Hopefully I will cover the lecture today. So basically genotype and phenotype, you're talking about a pea plant, you're talking about tall and short. The alleles are capital T, and small t, and then he defined homozygous, heterozygous condition, dominant and recessive alleles, that you already know. Coming on to genotype, another petal color of the plant here, color white, color pink or whatever, purple color. You go in a situation of dominant recessive and heterozygous condition, the dominant allele will be expressed. Coming on to what is an allele, on different types of alleles, what are haplotypes? It is important to understand for the upcoming presentation. So the allele is a DNA sequence at a specific chromosomal location, which represents as a variant or alternative form of a gene. For example, for a tall character, tall trait, there are two alleles. One is capital T, one is small t, one is dominant, one is. Each trait is represented by two alleles if the organism is diploid. There may be multiple alleles for a given gene or a given locus, that is called polyallelic situation. Humans diploid, we usually get two alleles for a given locus. Some genes may be monoallelic based on the sex chromosome, Y chromosome. And importantly, any variation in the allele number, ploidy number, that is really fatal, and it is really in genome organization and genome stability. Ploidy is important, alleles are important. If a deviation from that, is fatal to the organism. And polyallelic, more than two alleles, biallelic, triallelic, quadriallelic, 2, 3, and 4. And then locus, a specific chromosome location, can refer to a gene location on a chromosome or specific sequence element of a gene, that is called locus. And what is haplotype? Haplotype, a set of DNA variations. These are nothing but in a given population, there may be DNA variations or allele variations can happen. This may be SNPs or indels, we will see in the further slides. They are mainly adjacent to each other. They are located in a given locus only. And you can have a different haplotype for a population, different humans. My haplotype may vary from your haplotype. We will see into that, what are those polymorphism and haplotypes in further class. Again, genetic loci, location of the gene, location of where specific sequences are present, dominant allele, recessive allele, and then a combination of B, A, and C genes. B is dominant, this is homozygous dominant, A is homozygous recessive, C is heterozygous. This is, you are looking at a different chromosomes here. Then germline and somatic mutation. One more fundamentally important concept. Any mutation that is happening in terms of the gametes of a given organism, eggs or sperms, given the sex of the organism, any mutation happening in the egg, mutation happening in the sperm, they are called as germline mutations. And as important, the reproduction, fertilization happens. Germline mutations are inherited. The mutation in the germline will be given to the progeny. On the other hand, somatic mutation, I am an individual, my somatic body in terms of the leaving the germ cells, egg or sperm, whatever remaining is called somatic tissues. A cancer is a somatic mutation. It happens in a specific tissue, and that is non-inherited in general. And silent mutation, no visible detectable phenotype can be given for a mutation. That is called silent mutation, missense and nonsense mutation. Your fundamentals, you go into that. A substitution can give a specific missense in the sequence, provides a nonsense codon, chain termination. If you take an example of non-synonymous variant in terms of SNPs that we will see in the further slide, that results from a missense mutation or nonsense mutation, what we discussed here, then a sequence that may have altered amino acid in a specific given chromosomal or gene location, that is a non-synonymous variant of the SNP. We will see what are variants. But remember that, try to go into these mutation types. So coming on to mutations, now why we are talking about mutations and polymorphism and populations? Because one of the important concepts we are evolving into in the times of studying a specific genotyping mechanism. Genotyping is nothing but a process determining the DNA sequence, the genotype at specific positions within a gene of an individual or of a population, across populations. We'll see that. You're looking for a DNA sequence at a specific positions of the chromosomes. We will see that. What are the specific position? For example, my gene of 3000 base pairs length, if I give a sequence 3000 base pair, this is my gene. Is that enough to study in terms of functionality? It may not be enough. I need to go into each individual basis, how the individual bases differ from me to you and to you as a whole population in US, whole population into India, how they change for a given gene. That is called a genotypic process. You have to determine the whole variability of these 3000 bases, and genotyping helps to differences in specific DNA sequences across populations. For example, given a population here, you need to identify genomic variants of the given gene length, and then significantly see that why the variants are important, how the frequency of the variants we will see, allele frequency, and then what the phenotypes coming from this, each variant is important for studying genotyping. For example, variant 1 gives this phenotype, variant 5 can give phenotype H, some of them overlap with this phenotype. That is a basic fundamental understanding of genotyping. And if comes of genotyping, one of the fundamental things, single nucleotide polymorphism, they are nothing but given gene or locus, given the alleles, there may be more than one allele given in terms of the populations at the time. For example, the given locus here in a gene chromosome 10, let's say, my allele is A in terms of the location, but your in terms of the same location, your allele is G, another allele is T. But you're not talking about mutations here. As such, this is not a mutation, because if you're talking about population, if you're talking about polymorphisms of DNA, you will not have a representative DNA, right? How you can give a representative reference sequence for human genome? There are multiple humans, there are multiple variants of sequences. You may not give a reference genome, but you take some pool of 10 to 20 all over the world and you try to provide it as a reference sequence. So for a given population, you don't have a wild type and mutant condition. You have a condition of variance. Given location, what is my nucleotide sequence compared to your nucleotide sequence? What is the allelic frequency among population? What is the variability, or you call it as a polymorphism? You never call it as a mutation. These are polymorphisms, that's called single nucleotide polymorphism, given the location of one nucleotide at the specific location of the gene. So how do you do that? Again, normal sequencing method. You go into sequence analysis, you get a genome sequence FASTA. Then you use a specific SNP filters, and then you go by the sequence 1, sequence 2, or sequence 1000 sequence from US, 1000 sequence from India. You compare it, get the FASTA file, all the sequences. You separate them by filtering SNPs. Then you generate a hap map that is called haplotype map for our US populations, haplotype map for an Indian population. If you know have reference, you can use some other internal references to find what are the hap. There has been the international project that is being done, got International HapMap project. They were able to define different haplotypes across different populations. These haplotypes will help in health, disease, and other association, and also to find specific drugs for a specific population. How environment will influence a population is different from human to USA. So few more abbreviations you have to go through. Given the time, I may not cover. Look into that. What is the reference sequence? Polymorphism we spoke about already. You again definition of SNPs. What are variants? What are multiple nucleotide polymorphism? You go into that. But I will take SNP and talk further again more keenly. But you again go into indel. What is a mutation? Copy number variation. Please read into that. These are important for further classes. And you look into example of different polymorphisms given a situation. And indel is called insertion deletion. MNP is a multi SNPs, not only one single nucleotide. You call it as a reference sequence approximately, but a frequency allele you may call it as. You may not call usually a reference sequence. SNP is T here at the given population. Alternate sequence is G. MNP, you are looking at two nucleotides in the given same spot of the gene, a GC here rather than TA. An insertion is a new nucleotide added. C is added here. Small TGA is added here. A deletion is specific portion of the C and TG are deleted here. So insertion deletions are also an example of polymorphism, but for the curriculum, only concentrate on SNPs. So this is, you're looking at the population, individual sequences you sequenced, you're looking at specific variability of the given location called SNPs, and then you generate a haplotype. This in a given gene, AGT is an haplotype, and then AGA is a haplotype, GTA is a haplotype, that is among population. One more important terms in terms of this is allele frequency. For example, if a given allele, what are the variability in terms of how many times I can find A, how many times I can find G, or is there more? What is the frequency of the alleles? That is called minor allele frequency. It is a fraction of the second most common allele of a given locus in a population. You go using a specific formula that is called as a C. For example, a case of C is the minor allele here. You compare in terms of the genome assembly, how many times you can find this C allele of the 1,000 genomes. You divide with specific formula, how many SNPs are formed there. You generate a 15% frequency there for this allele. This may be additional material. If you are interested to understanding, read it. Otherwise, it's okay. So coming on to SNPs in a little bit more. What are SNPs? Single nucleotide polymorphism are point mutations found in every living organism that occur at greater than 1% frequency in a given genomic population. We're talking about population, you are talking about percent frequency, a specific mutation that differs from individual to individual. SNPs are biologically important. They serve as a markers, potential contribute for disease association risk factors, and also help in drug treatment for variable response. So they constitute in terms of tumor profiling, strain generation, some other methods you can use, and also genomic analysis also for heritable diseases. SNPs are really important. Furthermore, a little bit more for your 2 marks, 4 mark questions. SNP is a substitution. I'm talking about point mutation of a single nucleotide in the genome. They are among 0.5%, they are percent to percent variability is there. For example, if you take a 3 billion base pairs of my genome, I will have 3 million SNPs in me compared to you or compared to specific population. You again go a little bit, read into what are variants, look into our general understanding. Then one more important thing is that SNPs are usually binary. They are biallelic. Given a situation for wild type, monoallelic means normal copy of the wild type, and then another copy is having a mutation there. Monoallelic, only one allele is there. But biallelic means you have both chromosomes at both loci or alleles in the loci of the both genes are wrongly there present. So you get a heterozygous having 2 different molecules of alleles here, SNPs, get a homozygous allele here. For example, it's always biallelic, allele 1 and allele 2, allele 1, allele 2, allele 1, allele 2. For a specific gene, it changes with the depending the frequency of the population. Types of SNPs, synonymous, non-synonymous. SNPs may be, they are different from express sequence tags. They may be in the non-coding and coding region, but ESTs are only coding regions. In the coding region, again, synonymous, non-synonymous. In terms of non-synonymous, they may be missense and nonsense. What I am talking here, look into that. To be synonymous or non-synonymous, SNP must be in the coding region of the DNA. A synonymous SNP in the coding SNP that does not change the protein sequence, but a non-synonymous that causes a missense or nonsense mutation. Missense or nonsense mutation that changes the coding region, protein at the destination. Synonymous doesn't change the protein. So given a genome, given a population, how the SNPs vary. Genomic distribution of SNPs are not homogeneous. For example, it may not be same for me and same for you. They may occur in non-coding coding regions. And usually one of the thing is called genetic recombination and mutation rate for a given population. It defines the SNP density. And one more importantly, in terms of specific locations of the genome called microsatellites, they also help in SNP density. For example, long AT rich regions are they have a less SNPs. And because other way you can say that the more AT region in the given genome, there are less SNPs in that. Or conversely, the more GC content the genome has in that satellite or domain regions, more SNP can form. It is also associated in terms of genome sequences and also studying in specific histone association also it will help in that. For a given population, the variation between human population, the alleles we talk about here, and it may be in given a population, the SNP allele may be rare compared to other population. Minor allele frequency of the locus we studied in an example before. Importance of SNPs in terms of for generating treatment drugs, chemicals, and response to pathogen, vaccines, everything is associated with SNPs. Yeah, they are an important concept of personalized medicine also. By knowing your SNP, by knowing the haplotype of a given population, you can generate much more in terms of the pharmacogenomics personalized medicine. So this is an SNP database. One talks about a specific kind of Homo sapiens species, position of the chromosome 19. The allele is T changed to C, and specifically different missense variant. You get into specific allele frequency here, and also look into allele submissions following into this pathogenic association here. So I might send one more link for Zoom in 10 minutes because there are 15 more slides we need to cover. Okay, I will stop the sharing here. Then I will send you one more recording. Okay, welcome back. We covered a little bit basics on SNPs and ESTs in the previous lecture. And continuation of the same lecture level, we will take a little bit slowly on this slide. What we are looking here is from a database, specific SNP you are looking here. That is belonging to Homo sapiens. And you are looking at the chromosome location of the SNP here. Clinical significance, you go in a little bit of, in terms of, if you zoom in the clinical significance of the tabs given here, you look into that, these SNPs are associated with a lot of pathogenicity. So this cause of this SNP present in a human population associates it with the pathogenicity. What kind of diseases it is associated, given a GO term, gene ontology term, this sometimes we call, given the accession, it's kind of lipoproteinemia, Alzheimer's disease, hyperlipoproteinemia, another variant here. Specifically, it's kind of relevant to an Alzheimer's disease variant in the SNP. By studying, analyzing this SNP among varied population, you can analyze the susceptibility or pathogenicity of the given population with given disease condition. That is one of the unit 2. It associates with how do you associate genotyping with the disease association in that. And you looking into the allele of the frequency, they are talking about specific geographical location or 100,000 genomes given. Of the 1,000 genomes given in a specific database, they have different human population, and this is Estonian population only. Maybe this allele is less frequency in Estonian population compared to other genomes here. And then it's a missense variant. That's why it is associated with pathogenicity. If it is a non-synonymous variant of the SNP, then you may not see pathogenicity. You may see only an association. But it is a missense variant that fundamentally gives a wrong protein that causes the diseases. Again, if you go into any SNP database, you go into a kind of frequency of it, variant details, how many submissions are done, history of the submissions, who are the scientists working in that, what are the countries working on that, what are the projects, is part of the HapMap project or not, you can go into published literature also. One more important that, the SNP database will be a secondary database. You cannot submit the data just like that, so that you worked on something for a month, you find something, you submit to the annotation, because it is associated with the diseases, they will not accept as such. They want to test you functionally, how you prove that it is associated with the Alzheimer's disease. You need to show a clinical study, you need to show your data of the pathogenicity, how the brain peptides of the Alzheimer's in the brain looks in a normal disease condition, publish the material, then only the database takes into that, because it's a functionally important database for in terms of the disease and personalized medicine. So coming on to SNPs in terms of disease association, another one more important concept is that you are looking for an SNP here in terms of Homo sapiens only. But again, as a genomic view, as a genome association, not only one disease, how do I want to know the polymorphism of a given population, given SNPs, given SNP databases? I want to see the whole repertoire of the associated disease with the genomes and the polymorphism. How can I do that? Can I do that or not? So then the study started looking on a genome-wide association study called GWA study or GWA study. It is also known as a whole genome association study. It is an observational study of genome-wide set of genetic variants in different individuals to see if any variant is associated with the trait. Trait means any disease condition. This is the variant of this same SNP. It is associated with the disease. Maybe pathogenicity is not established yet in given the variant of this SNP. So basically, GWA study is that you are looking for a genetic variance among populations or different individuals to see an association with a trait. The trait you are important here, the trait in terms of diseases is what are the total diseases I can see whole world and what are the association with that. How you can do that? You can do a genome-wide assay using the whole genome assembly studies. You can specifically generate on the statistical methods. You generate a specific, this is called a Manhattan plot in terms of statistical analysis. You are looking at a specific log frequency of the SNP, frequency of the polymorphism, the chromosome you are looking here, chromosome 1 to 22 in humans. Each dot represent an SNP of the given gene location, given variant here. Of the given, then looking at the population wise, you may see one SNP variant is coming among specific chromosomes. It may vary along with the population. So that one aspect you can see. And based on this whole genome-wide association studies, there's a lot of data has been generated in terms of allele frequency, 0.001 to 0.5. If the allele is more frequent, that frequency is associated with the disease, that is also an important. Mainly the GWA studies, the whole genome studies, try to focus in this chart. See this chart, x-axis allele frequency, y-axis effect size in terms of small, moderate and large effect, giving in that there is a small statistical number for it. If you look in that spreading of that, you are looking for highly penetrant Mendelian mutations. It's fine, they are common. Common variant with large effects and rare variants with small effects, that the frequency is very low. But mostly the genome variant studies will give you a data that is very common in terms of this corner, this quadrant. Common variants with small effects identify GWAs. This is for a genome association studies important. For example, if a given allele different in populations, allele SNP1, SNP2, you go with the DADI frequency data, frequency of the allele 52.6 over 41.2 frequency. You look at the control sequences, you use some genomes reference sequences and then compare that. You can say that this SNP1 allele or this variant of the SNP1 is commonly exist or prevalent compared to this SNP1. Again, why this is you are using, you are with the advantage of genome assemblies, advantage of specific databases that helps you to go into SNPs only, you generate statistical. The allele you are looking here, that allele is more in terms of coronary artery disease patients. This allele of the variant of the SNP is commonly prevalent. So why I'm talking about that? By knowing the allele, you will know the gene. Once you know the gene, what is the protein coded in the gene, then you can go into the protein function, protein association with the disease. And by doing so, you can generate a drug target to control the disease. So this is again an association plot. You can use this association plot, for example, again log and the different genes present on the chromosome, specific location of the chromosomes here. In one location, there is a cholesterol control gene is present. Given a SNP for that, there is high variant availability in one population. That's why some population of the people will say in the specific population in terms of geography, a specific gene pool, they may say that you have a cholesterol susceptibility. Your probably family lineage tells that heart diseases are common in that family. So they may associate with they may find the SNP in that location. They may tell you what are the drug targets, what are the diet controls, environmental controls you have to do further to control this LDLR gene and probably control the effect of this allele variation. These are little bit additional information for you. You may try to cover it and study, or you may skip and then you may go into the fundamental 5 slides of SNP I have given. But why I am giving a little bit extra material means because I have recently attended an international conference and I have seen the posters in the conference. There are 2,000 posters in for 3 days. I can very proudly say that 1,000 posters are only genomics and proteomics. Because you are in a life science student, biotech student, you may get jobs in the coming few years or coming in 6 months, mostly in these domain areas, genomics and proteomics only. So better go a little bit more, do more extra effort so that you have your not only fundamentals on SNPs, you have more advanced understanding, though you are not having practical knowledge. You can give a theoretical knowledge in terms of an interview, you may be one step ahead. So that's why I'm putting a little bit more effort for this, but next few chapters we might succeed this understanding of that. So that's what in association mapping, this is, you look for a quantitative trait loci. This is also an important term used in terms of plant breeding and also in terms of human diseases. You're looking for a genetic linkage or linkage disequilibrium mapping. This concept we need to talk in the unit 3. When you talk about a physical and genetic mapping, how do you map a trait to a given gene? How do you map a loci to a given gene? So it's nothing but you're looking for a disease association mapping with the specific genes, specific loci that links a phenotype to the genotype. Phenotype is observable characteristic, genetic constitution. By observing this quantitative trait loci, you come into a conclusion of genetic association in terms of plants and plant breeding experiment, for example, rice genome, and then you do a genome association mapping. So briefly, in few minutes, we will conclude the lecture. But if you go into GWAS catalog, this is, you can see a beautifully already a database of all disease associated with human chromosomes have been cataloged. And then you are looking at a specific less zoom condition here. You are looking for a dot that is digestive system disease, cardiovascular disease. Compared to digestive, cardiovascular disease are more prevalent. You look at the dots, it's not only one gene controlling that, a lot of chromosomes will have these dots coming up. The multiple genes, multiple loci, multiple SNP variants on the chromosomes control these two traits. If you go into the next slide, little bit zoom in, you go into the zoom in, different color for different dot, different chromosomal location. If you go zoom into the different light colors here, each one of the color represent an inflammatory marker, body weight and body measures, cardiovascular again, and hematological measurement of the given population pool there. Immunological studies, what are the immunological characteristic SNPs associated with the disease population, that is also important. For example, in the COVID-19 in the given situation, we might be less susceptible as Indians because in terms of our SNP variants, in terms of our immune repertoire, we might be stronger compared to American populations. At the same time, young population are more stronger compared to older population because of existence of this immunological repertoire that might help with the association of the genes and for example, viral flu and viral influenza like diseases. You may find a target, you may find a consistent location of the chromosome that tells that these SNP variants in Indian population protects them from COVID-19. That may be a study you can see in further 1 year or 2 years. So looking on the haplotype mapping of the COVID-19. So in this case, one example of the dot, you are looking for Alzheimer's disease, one of the blue dot represent that. You go into this database, you go into other dots, each dot will represent a disease condition. You go into looking into a map in terms of, this is the study is most evolving. The database is having a lot of data coming up in the years, but first database generated in 2019, there was less dots you can see compared to the dots here. You can see less dots, less location of the chromosomes were covered at that time. Specific important diseases were studied at that time. So the density of the population, density of the terms is less compared to the previous slides. That's been 2020 now, 10 years of the data. So coming on to this, concludes our SNPs, concludes genome association or disease association studies. Based on this association, you can find some kind of drug targets that can cure the disease. For example, vaccine you can develop based on the haplotype, based on the SNP database, and the association of a specific given genome of an individual, given the genomes of a population, you can study in that. So coming on to the end of the class, we will conclude it with the genetic testing of the future, or what was done in a few decades back. Where are we in terms of genetic testing now? And conclude the lecture in a few minutes or so. So in 1998 or 2000, when genome sequencing was coming, in parallel, there was a lot of hype in terms of promising development of the genome project, success of the genome project, what it will help. They were talking about two terms, saying that we can sequence each person's genome. By doing so, you can have a cancer allele from your lineage, from your pedigree, by sequencing your genome, by targeting you to specific allele of the cancer. We can streamline your specific personal medicine treatment, specific drug development plans, so that we can cure your cancer, or we can give you from child, as a child to your future generation, we can give you what should not eat, what you should eat to control this disease in terms of the cancer. That was the hype created at that time, but we are almost 20 years now after Human Genome Project. Whatever that have been told at that time, we are almost 40% success, or maybe we have to do a lot of work to make it to a complete fruitful succession, because there are social and ethical considerations for it. And also, when the Human Genome Draft came, and then a complete draft almost came in 2006, we know that the information is a lot of junk. So we were very surprised, right? Scientists were surprised that only less 0.5% or 5 to 10% of the genome codes for proteins, all other is non-junk. By saying that, by getting that blueprint of the God's code or human code, then we were into a limbo that, oh my God, we have to study 99% of 99.8% of the human genome, and we have to make sense out of it. What is it code for? What it is do? So that put us back into analyzing the more human genome, more relevant regulation of the not only protein coding genes, some other genes like microRNA can also control gene expression. So we are going into that. But in 20 decades back, the people were talking about genetic testing, saying that by analyzing human DNA, RNA, chromosomes, proteins, and certain metabolites, we can detect the cause of heritable disease association, heritable disease related genotypes, mutations, phenotypes, or karyotypes, or now you can call it as haplotypes for clinical purposes. If you have given a question on 2 marks, what is genetic testing? You can write this definition. You can elaborate, saying again, the genetic testing is a type of medical test that identifies changes in the chromosome, changes in the genes or proteins. The result of the genetic test can confirm or rule out a condition of that, and gives a choice to the person to go ahead with the treatment or not. You cannot force on any person that you have to go with this specific plan. You need to take a consent of the patient for further treatment and then to treat the genetic disorder. More than 1,000 genetic tests are currently in use. For example, you can go with the diagnostic assays for genetic testing. You go with molecular genetic test or gene test. You try to isolate or you try to SNPs. You go into the polymorphism study. You analyze the short stretches of DNA for variations and then identify the SNPs associated with the disease, associated in terms of susceptibility, pathogenicity, or simply an association. Or you go into chromosomal genetic test. You know that you are into this position. You know that a short segment of a gene present on one chromosome is there for your disease. Then you want to go into kind of going into a full chromosome genetic test. Why don't see one chromosome, go into looking into more chromosome analysis. Maybe we will find something associated with the genetic condition. Some other SNPs work together in terms of enhancer regions and gene expression. You may study a whole chromosome genetic test. or you may go into specifically the product of the SNPs genes or SNP gene proteins, and you go into abnormality of the protein level. You go with the genetic in SNPs, you identify the gene location, then you go for an assay in terms of a protein that is relevant to Alzheimer's disease. Why the protein biochemically? How do you find the test? What is the altered form of the protein in that? Molecular genetic test, go into specific gene, chromosomal genetic test, and go into a biochemical genetic test. Then coming on to the chapter conclusion, that is called DNA chip. What is a DNA chip? They have given in the curriculum. You might get in a 2-mark, 4-mark question. Then DNA chip is nothing but a genetic testing kit or genetic testing chip. That is the size of a postal stamp. If you see a post stamp, it is nothing but the size of the postal stamp. In terms of the genomic testing happening, one of the key technologies generating this critical new wealth of genomic testing information was being highlighted at the time of the postage stamp sized slide. That is on the glass or plastic. They said we can catch your genome, catch your DNA repertoire or DNA code in a stamp of DNA that is coated on the plastic. That is, in general terms, it is called a DNA chip based on the colloquial terms. But if you look more deep into what is the technology that was used, microarray technology was used in that. So it is called DNA microarray or DNA chip, or in terms gene chip. So one of the companies that used this is called Affymetrix at that time in 2 decades back. They are the one commercializing these DNA chips in terms of personalized medicine. They are the commercial version of the gene chip that looks like this small portion. You get a specific probes, you look into that. So how the DNA chip works, this is the text, you can go and read. Small concepts have been well explained here. It's one of the cancer experiment, kind of hypothetical situation. They have taken step-by-step approach how the DNA chip works. What are the probes? You look into that, how the probes bind to the DNA. For small short answer questions, you can look and write this. But I will take this in more detail in the functional genomics chapter. When I talk more about microarray, I can explain this, how the method works in more detail. But for the time pointing, if you are associated with the question of what is the diagnostic test, what is the DNA chip, and how do you find drug targets for DNA, how do you cure cancer by DNA association studies, you can write these small steps. So I will conclude the class now. I will stop sharing, stop recording. Then 5 minutes we will speak briefly.